Hey, welcome back to the lecture. And now let's implement the button task handler. So here what it should do, it should poll the button pin, and if it is pressed, and it should update the flag. Let's do that. First let's read it. So for that let's use GPIO read. Here it is, read input data bit, etc. So here we are actually have to use read input data bit, right? Because we are reading a specific pin, right? That is GPIO port C pin number 13 actually. So let's use a read input data bit, and it also needs two arguments, so GPIO and the GPIO peripheral name and the GPIO pin number. So let's give that. So here GPIO C GPIO pin 13, right? Great. So and what it returns, let's see. So it returns the input port pin value, that is 0 or 1. So on Nucleo, if this function returns 0, that means the button is pressed. So on Discovery, if this function returns 0, means the button is not pressed. So you should know that difference. Why? The reason I have already told you by explaining the schematic, right? So if I want to code with respect to Nucleo, then I would write like this. So if this returns 1, then button is not pressed on the Nucleo board. Fair enough. And if it returns 0, then button is pressed. So now here what I would do is I will just update the flag. Which flag? This flag. So here I will just make it as pressed, not pressed. That's it. So here it is else, sorry. So whenever the button task handler runs, it reads the status of the GPIO pin number 13 of GPIO port C, and if that read function returns 0, that means the button is actually pressed. That's why the control will come here, and here sorry, here it is actually not pressed. This is pressed, and it will make the button status flag as pressed. That's it. Now let's test this on the hardware. Alright, so let me compile the code and let me just download it to my target. Alright, so it is running, and yes, it is working. Great, it is working. You can see here whenever I press the board, the LED is actually glowing, isn't it? And whenever I leave the button, the LED is getting turned off. Great. So very simple application and very straightforward, and try to get the trace if you want. I have not taken trace in order to save some time. Now trace is very similar to the previous exercise, and I will see you in the next lecture with the same exercise, but let's introduce interrupt. So here actually we are polling, right, in the task handler, right? So let's change that to interrupt mode. So whenever we press the button, interrupt should trigger and the ISR should run, and ISR should update the button status flag instead of task. And we'll see that how we can do that in the next exercise. I'll see you in the next exercise.